through the 1640s into the 1650s, and then getting into the 1660s, New Netherland is really starting to develop, really starting to grow. This is a painting that I did a couple of years ago, or about a year ago, I guess, of Manhattan. And we're looking north from Governor's Island. This is the Hudson River over here, the East River on this side. The ship is one of many Dutch merchant ships that were bringing colonists and supplies and trade goods back to the Netherlands. That particular ship was called the Trouw. It came to Manhattan 4 or 5 times. And in the background, we have the fort, Fort Amsterdam, and the Dutch church inside the fort, of which Collegiate is the descendant. We have this...
By the way, it was never called St. Nicholas Church.
So don't ever make that mistake.
Let's make that correction here tonight for people who might be tempted. That's Washington Irving, I believe, who uses that. It was never called St. Nicholas.
It's called Church in the Fort?
Church in the Fort, yeah.
And also, one of the interesting things when I was working on this painting was a discovery that around the oldest buildings in Manhattan are a little cluster of wooden shelters just outside the walls of the fort, near the Hudson River. And that later, as businesses were developing and the city was starting to grow, the bigger houses, the warehouses, and some of the finer houses start to be built on the East River. And probably one of the most magnificent of those structures is this building, which is right out overlooking the harbor. This is the house where Peter Stuyvesant lived. This is a painting of another part of Manhattan Island. This is not far from where we are right now. This is Hanover Square. And we're looking, this is William Street, if you know where William Street is. And we're looking toward the East River. That's Brooklyn out in the distant background. And I think it's particularly interesting for us to develop a visual sense of the beginnings of Manhattan as a community. And I think no one thinks of New York this way. So it was
Is that the Merrill Lynch Bowl?
yeah, it is. At that point, it was just a cow. But people were interested in this. This is a painting of around the same time. This is Beverwyck. This is Albany, and this is the little frontier community of Beverwyck over here. This is Fort Orange in the background, and very few of these large seagoing merchant ships made their way all the way up the Hudson River. But we know that this one did. This is the Gelderse Bloem. Wouter van Twiller was a part owner in this vessel, and we know that it brought 12 families of colonists to Rensselaerswyck in the 1650s. So you have I think one of the interesting things about this particular painting is that it really gives you a sense of the frontier and the wilderness and the primitive aspects of life in the New World, opposed to this example of one of the great seagoing naval powers in the world at that time. So you have this comparison between the elegance of the old world and this kind of crude, rustic quality of the New World. This painting is called A View of Fort Orange.
However, they eventually brought over a lot of their goods from the Netherlands. It became a fairly sophisticated place. Some of the artifacts that are found, they're not cheap. They're fairly good goods. And everything that they would have had in a village in the Netherlands, they had over here eventually. These things were brought over intact. And I often say that the only difference for a Dutchman at that time coming over to the New World and let's say coming up to Beverwijk, he would be perfectly at home in the village. All of the crafts would be there, all of the trades, the shoemakers, the tailors, the coopers and wheelwrights and so forth. The only thing different would be the mountains on three sides, the Catskills, the Adirondacks, and the Berkshires, and hundreds and hundreds of Indians at any given time would be in the village. Those would be the two distinguishing features. Otherwise, it would have been very similar to any village in the Netherlands.
This painting is fun to think about because here you have Manhattan, relatively safe place, developed government, a fort, a harbor, visits from immigrants who are arriving. Fort Orange, Beverwijk, where Albany is today, a small community, some security. And then you have these really adventurous individuals who decide they're not even going to live within the security of Fort Orange. They want to go out and live in the world that is occupied by the Indians. And this is a small farm that was operated by Tenoos Dirksen van Vechten. It's not far from the Paapskanee site, the Indian site. And he is one of several early Dutch settlers who lived out in the wilderness. He's alone. He's this particular guy was always in a lot of trouble, and so he always seemed sort of antisocial to me. And I think he got maybe they asked him to leave Fort Orange. But there are others. There's Aaron Van Curler, who's living north of the fort by himself among the Mohawks, and Van Vechten down here in Paapskanee. And you can see that we know a little bit about his house. We know that there was a house, a barn, and a hay barrack. We don't know that it looked like this, but I visited this site with two archaeologists, and we wandered through a field that had been plowed for corn, and you could actually walk through the debris from this farm. So you could see the relationship of just the bricks and the stones to the Paapskanee Creek. So the painting is kind of based on that debris field.